Okay, are you able to record now? I gave you, or I granted you access to record now.
See. Looks like it's going.
Okay, cool. It should change from like a, yeah, perfect. It goes from the circle to 2 squares.
Yep.
Okay, so you did the track scholarship, got to Stanford, anthropology, and then you said what was anthropology and
environmental science and policy. So 2 different degrees. It's like environmental science and policy was focused on kind of how you study environmental science and how it applies to law and government policy, and focused on specifically on the ocean, kind of ocean policy. And then the anthropology stuff is, study of mankind and humans. And I did an archaeological trip down to Peru for a summer and got to be involved in an excavation of a 2,000-year-old pre-Incan site that was actually a cult way up in the mountains of the Cordillera Blanca in Peru. So this is the summer after my freshman year. And
oh my goodness.
Professor that was one of the anthropology professors that was like, hey, we need some volunteers, you just got to come out and dig in the ground for a few months. And then I'll pay for everything else. You get your plane ticket and accommodations paid for. So I was like, sweet, I'm in. So
oh, hell yeah.
Lima, and then, took this bus up to the middle of nowhere, little tiny town, way up. It was at I want to say 12,000 feet up in the mountains. So really high up in the Andes Mountains. And we got up there, and it was this site that was partway excavated. And it was a cult where they would bring in people from all over the region to pay tribute to this cult. And what they would do is they'd bring shells and other presents up to this cult. They would present them, and then they go through this indoctrination ceremony where the cult leader would basically give them peyote, and they would put them in these underground tunnels, and they'd be tripping and hallucinating and walking through these underground tunnels. They would have water that would run through these passages and make a really loud noise, like a thundering noise. And they'd get to the end of the passageway, and there would be this idol representing the cult, and they'd use these coal mirrors to shine light down on it and highlight this idol, and they would see it and they'd fall down and they'd be like, wow, this is amazing. And that was kind of part of their indoctrination ceremony. So this is 2,000 years ago, and we were there digging in the ground. This is in 2001, I guess, summer. And we were down there and pulling up stuff out of the ground. And when I was there, the summer I was there, we pulled out these shell trumpets. So this is 12,000 feet up in the mountains. They have these conch shells that were carved with these intricate carvings that were brought as tribute to this cult. And we were, we digging in the ground, we pull these things out, and the head archaeologist would looked around, pulled this trumpet, this shell trumpet out of the ground, and was looking around saying, hey, does anybody know how to play the trumpet? And I played in a ska band in high school, right? So
yeah. We were in the 90s. Our generation was ska music, right?
Right, exactly. We had not a punk at West Hill. We had a trumpet, we had saxophone, and so who knew that skill would totally translate. I would get to use it later. So this guy, he hands me Professor John Rick hands me the trumpet, and I get to actually play this 2,000-year-old trumpet.
Oh my goodness!
And now it's in the National Museum of Peru or whatever. And it was a big deal that we found these things. I think in that season we found, I can't remember, maybe 15 of them, all with different designs, and it was really cool. I mean, it's like Indiana Jones, walking along, and they have these passageways underground that nobody had entered for thousands and thousands, or for 2,000 years, and you get to be the first person to go down there and check things out. It's pretty special.
Dang, that's me at 19. I went to a computer college. Luckily got a job at IBM, but I was doing small time, like entry level work, I guess, but it was at IBM. Gosh, your story sounds pretty freaking amazing. Prior to that, have you been out of the country? So you said at 19 you did that in Peru? Right.
Yeah. I traveled a little bit, we go down to Mexico. My family went down to Baja a lot. I took a trip in high school. I did the Europe trip. We went to Spain for the Spanish class. So that trip, and went around a little bit to France and Germany since I was in the neighborhood. But no, I didn't travel a whole bunch. And I think that's why when I got this opportunity in college and then especially took that first summer trip down to Peru, it was like, this is amazing. Like, I need to keep doing this. I need to figure out a way to keep going overseas. And so every summer after that, I went somewhere else. I went, New Zealand was the next summer, the next summer after that, I went to India and Australia. Just every summer I was going out and doing some kind of research. I went to the Bahamas one time and worked with fishermen on marine protected areas. It was just, I got the bug. And then, I did a job after I finished college in 2005. I worked in California on environmental issues for the next 4 years or so. And then my wife got this opportunity to become a foreign service officer. And so we moved to Vietnam. She joined the State Department in 2009. And then we moved to Vietnam to Ho Chi Minh City in 2010. And since then, we've just been overseas, basically. We go back maybe for a year of training. But for the most part, we're always overseas, always going to a new country.
2010, I was in Saigon in 2009. I don't think I was. I think I was I was back in the States by 2010. So I probably missed you guys by just a few months. Probably. I don't remember. I remember messaging you at one point. I don't remember if that was my second or third trip or even my first trip. When I messaged you, I think it was my third trip. Do you happen to remember how many years ago?
It's funny. I was just looking at that. I think I have it on Facebook Messenger. Actually, I think it was right when I was going there, and you would give me some like really good recommendations for restaurants and stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. Let's see. My first one from you, I think, is 2009. So I don't know what trip that was for you.
That was my second
November.
trip.
That's what it's on my phone.
I spent 6 months there on that trip. How about you in 2010? That was your first trip to Vietnam?
Yeah. So that was our assignments are generally between they're usually 2 or 3 years. When you're first joining with the State Department, you get 2-year assignments, and then you bump up to 3, and then sometimes you can extend for longer than that. But so anyhow, that first trip in Vietnam was 2 years. So we lived there in Ho Chi Minh City.
What was one of the online questions was, What was the least favorite place you've been to?
Yeah.
I think that's a harsh one to answer because that's kind of almost seems mean to whatever country you end up saying. If you want to answer, it's up to you.
Yeah, no, I think my truthful answer to that question is that I have enjoyed all the places we've been overseas for different reasons, and some of them were more difficult places to live than others. I mean, when we were in Bangladesh in 2016 to 2017. And the time that we were there was a security incident where there were these terrorists that basically attacked a restaurant right in the neighborhood where we were living. And the whole city went on lockdown. We weren't able to go outside. We had to travel via armored vehicle. We had to send, we had our 2 children there with us. We had to send one of our kids back to live in the United States for a year. So that was a challenging time to be in that country, in that city. But it was still amazing to be there. Great food, wonderful people. The work that I was doing was really compelling. At that time, I was the human rights officer there in Dhaka, and so I was helping to follow and cover events related to human rights in that country. And it was very compelling work. It was a lot of fun, and I felt like I was making a difference. And so, I think it's a good question. It's where was it really, did you not enjoy being there? But the truth is, even though that was a really tough situation, I really enjoyed being there.
Yeah. For me, I've traveled 4 months to Sydney, Australia, 6 months to Vietnam, on 2 occasions, 6 months each time. A third time, I've been to Vietnam 4 times. The other 2 times were like 2 weeks. 2 and 3 weeks the other 2 times. The funny thing for Vietnam for me was the first time being there for 6 months. At the 5th month, all the mopeds honking their horns. Something like tripped in my head, and I'm like, I need to get back to America. All these bang, 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 bang. Like it was something went off in my head. Like I was like going like going ape shit crazy. I don't know what it was. And I was just like, I need to get back to America. I can't handle these horns. But it's such a, I think it was probably, I think I was buying the plane ticket like that week, and something must have just went off in my head saying, hey, you're going to get back to a civilization where you don't hear these horns every day. Because where I was staying, I mean, I think it's all in Vietnam. You kind of hear those mopeds throughout the night, even when you sleep.
Right.
If you're lucky, you get a hotel room that's really well insulated from the sounds. But yeah, that got to me. The mosquitoes in Vietnam.
Wherever you are, you know, I mean, there's going to be that one thing that just is a little annoying, and after a while, it just drives you nuts.
Yeah.
It reminds me in Ho Chi Minh City, that was the one thing that drove us crazy, and my wife in particular, is we would walk about 3 blocks from where we lived to the U.S. consulate there, in kind of on Lei Yuan, like right there in the center of town, and down this street, Win Tin Min Kai, and you during the evenings when you walked back, it was a one-way street, and it would be totally clogged with cars, right? Or not cars, but motorbikes mostly. And it would be so clogged that the motorbikes would spill out onto the sidewalks, right? So people are just zooming down the sidewalk, and you'd be walking home, you know, trying to get back after a long day at work. And these motorbikes just zooming past you at both sides on the sidewalk. And I remember by the end of being there for 2 years, that was definitely got a little bit old. You're just like, man, like, come on, stay in the road. This is the sidewalk.
Yeah.
Even though in the beginning you're like, oh, this is like a kind of fun experience. Like, what a weird quirk of the city that, you know, this happens. Wouldn't happen in San Diego or Virginia or whatever. But for a while it was just like, man, this is super annoying. I need to change the scenery.
Earlier you mentioned was that Bangladesh? I forget if you said it was Bangladesh. You said something where that you would the work that you were doing, you felt like you were really having an impact. One of the questions online was, explain to somebody that doesn't know diplomatic work at all, like they have no idea how you even get to work in that position, what you do every day, and they ask, how does it impact America, and how does it impact, like, say this person works at a casino here in San Diego at the Barona Casino, or somebody that works in Las Vegas, or somebody that just works at McDonald's. Explain how a diplomat could either affect it, or just how that is in the big picture, I guess. Yeah,
it's a good question, because I had no idea that this category of job existed for a really long time. You know, for high school, certainly didn't know it. Through most of college, I didn't know it. And it's interesting because diplomats, our foreign service officers, play a really important role, especially when you travel overseas. So there's the Department of State is based in Washington, D.C., and there's a big group of people that work there. And then in almost every country around the world, we have an embassy in the capital city. And the people who work in those embassies are diplomats. And so they work for the Department of State, and they have a bunch of different kinds of jobs. So you've got people that, like the job that I'm doing right now, they're economic officers. So their job is to follow economic trends, help American businesses overseas, help coordinate U.S. economic policy. You got people that work in the political section. They do the same thing on the political side. So following internal political developments, how different countries are interacting with each other. Then you've got people that are consular officers. So those people, when you go overseas and you go down to Cancun and you lose your passport and you're like, oh man, how am I going to get home? You go, to the consulate, the nearby consulate there, or the embassy in the capital city, and the people that process your application to help get you a new passport, those are consular officers. And there are American citizen services there in the embassies and consulates around the world. And they help people to get into trouble. If you get in jail, you lose your passport, any of those things. And they also are the people that process visa applications. So if you are a national of another country, you want to travel to the United States, you want to go to Disneyland, you go into the embassy or you go into the consulate, you apply for a visa, and the people that process that application, interview you, are diplomats. And there are people that come for a short amount of time that are non-immigrant visas. They come down on a tourist visa, or they come to do business. And there are people that are immigrants. Like, for instance, if you get married to an American national, you're a Bulgarian national, you get married to an American national, and you want to move to the United States, you apply for an immigrant visa, which allows you to come and eventually live in the United States long term. So there's all those kinds of people are diplomats. And I had no idea, like, wow, what a weird thing. We send people overseas, they live in each one of these countries for a few years, and they do this really, really wide range of jobs. And, thinking about, I like your question about, like, what does it mean? Like, if I work in a casino in Verona or whatever, like, how are these people helping me? Well, if you travel overseas, if you go to Mexico, if you go to another country, these are the people that are there to help you when you get in trouble. And in fact, that's one of the main reasons that we have embassies and consulates, is to help Americans when they travel overseas. The other thing that we do, and what I'm doing right now, which is pretty cool, is we help American businesses. And I work a lot with the Commerce Department. So there's the State Department that I work for, and then there's the Commerce Department. The Commerce Department, one of their big responsibilities is helping American businesses, helping people export the American products overseas. And I work with their foreign commercial officers, so they're diplomats overseas, and we help to identify opportunities for American businesses. And there's an office in San Diego that's called, I can't remember what the acronym stands for, but it's a USIAC, and basically they have an office that helps American companies that want to sell stuff overseas figure out markets and where to sell their stuff. And they'll contact the Commerce Department officer or someone like me, and then we look for opportunities, we help to link them up, and we help them to sell products. And so
like
my day, meeting with American companies, figuring out what their problems are, figuring out how to help their businesses succeed.
So I'm just going to ask, I guess it might sound like a stupid question, but I just don't know. Say if I were to open a IT services business, I do programming. Is it general? I'm guessing your economic or your ties with the economy there, I guess, might be more specific. But anyways, if I wanted to open up IT services doing programming, can I call Bangkok embassy and then say, hey, do you have some type of need for? Do you know a sector in Thailand that needs programming? Is that how it works, or am I way off?
No, I mean, we do have people that do that, and especially, we have people that do that. Contact the embassy directly, and often it'll be people that are in country already. So, like if you had your IT company based in California, and then you were opening up a new branch here in Bangkok, you could come to the embassy, or you would contact the embassy and set up a meeting and talk about opportunities and how there might be ways for us to help. But generally, when people are in the United States, what they end up doing is they work through these offices that are located domestically in the United States. So there's one in San Diego, there's one in Chicago. There's maybe 100 of them or something like that in the United States. And the person in those offices in the United States would connect you with the person that works in the embassy in the country that you wanted to export your product to.
Gotcha.
And
is there?
You mentioned IT services. I think services are an export also. So just
product,
be selling widgets, you could selling car parts or something, but you could also be selling services, and those receive the same kind of treatment.
With the title of I think it was economic officer, diplomat, is that? And then feel free, if there's stuff that you can't answer, feel free to say that, and then we'll skip it. What's a typical day like for you, and what are some of the requests that comes across that you have to deal with?
Yeah, that's a good question. And every day is super different for me. So one of my primary responsibilities is to know what's happening in the country and the topics that I cover. And so in my office, the topics that I cover are related to environment, science, technology, health, and energy. And so big buckets of stuff that's going on. And so, I wake up every morning, I read the newspaper, I try to figure out what's happening in each one of those topics. And then maybe I'll see something interesting. There's a new energy tender that's out. The government's has just announced. So I'll call up my contact at the Ministry of Energy and I'll say, hey, I'd love to know more about this tender. Can we set up a meeting? Maybe I'll go out for a meeting. We'll have our local staff person that supports me on these kinds of issues come with me. We'll go talk. We'll find out a little bit more. then we'll after that meeting, we'll be like, okay, well, maybe this other company, this American company would be interested in this. Let's see if they have anybody that's working in this area. So we'll call up the American company. They set up another meeting. And then all of a sudden, the ambassador says, hey, I just heard about this development. You got to come in and brief us and tell us what's going on that. So then I'll go back to the office. We'll set up a meeting with the ambassador. We'll brief her or him on what's going on. And then, all of a sudden, Washington's calling and saying, hey, we heard that there's this development. Can you give us the latest scoop on it? So, maybe sometime in the evening, because we've got a 12-hour time difference, we'll set up a call with Washington, brief them on what's going on. So, that's kind of an example of how a day could go from there's a development in the morning, I get information about it, I go out and seek more details, and then I brief all the relevant people, whether they're my ultimate boss, the ambassador here, people in Washington, D.C., or American companies that might be interested.
Are you looking to I think one of the, or if I remember correctly, one of the online questions was, do you want to become an ambassador? And then secondly, what was the route that you took to get to your position eventually?
Yeah. So I think answer the first question, would you like to be an ambassador? Absolutely. That's kind of the pinnacle of our career.
Yep.
I don't think everybody wants to necessarily, because it's a tough job. You got to make difficult decisions, and there's a lot of pressure. It's also really challenging to get to that place. So how it works is, so I joined the State Department as a career Foreign Service officer, and I didn't know this, but the only thing you need to do to become a Foreign Service officer is you just take a test, basically. You sign up, and they offer these written tests. So you go to like a facility, and you take this test. It's about civics and your knowledge of foreign events, and kind of very broad, almost like an SAT kind of test. So you take that, and if you pass that test, then they have you take another kind of test that's more like essays and writing about what your knowledge is in a couple of different categories. And then if you pass that, you take an in-person exam, and you fly to Washington, D.C., you sit for like a several-hour test where it's with other people. It's not quite like Men in Black, but it's like that. You go and you have like scenarios and things that you have to use your brain, think on the fly, and show your ability to reason and think. So you go through this kind of multi-step process, and if you pass that test, then you become a Foreign Service officer. And it's an up-or-out system. So every few years you have to get promoted, and if you don't get promoted, then you're out. And that sometimes, as you get to more senior levels, can be challenging. And ultimately, you move up through the system. If you're really successful, you become a senior Foreign Service officer. You become part of that group, and then once you've been in for a while, you could be considered for an ambassadorship. But you're nominated by the president. So the president selects who she or he wants to have be ambassadors to each country, and then they have to be. Congress has to actually approve those appointments. So it's a really long process. I don't think you can necessarily say, I want to be ambassador and make it happen. You have to kind of be in the right place, the right time. You have to kind of work the system. And that's kind of the main way. The other way you can become an ambassador is that the president also has political appointed ambassadors. So our ambassador in Thailand right now is a business person, and he worked for 25 years in Asia working on business stuff. And so the current president said, this person has a lot of knowledge and skills that I think would be helpful, and then they can be appointed to be the ambassador in that case too. So we've got some politically appointed ambassadors that kind of come from the outside of the State Department, and then we have some career Foreign Service officers that are kind of move their way up through the system to become ambassador.
Did at any point in your career, did you feel that you were in over your head?
Every day. So the funny thing about this job is you are a generalist, right? So every post that I go to, I do a different job, and I have to learn not only the ins and outs of that country and what's going on there, but also a totally different function that I'm doing. So like when I did my first job in that when I did my job in Dhaka, I was the human rights officer. So I had to learn how to write reports and brief and do all these different things related to human rights. And when I went to Manila, I was a consular officer. So I had to learn how to interview people for visas. I spent some time helping American citizens in the American Citizen Services Unit. And there's a whole, different group of policies and programs and things that you need to be familiar with. So you are constantly in this career, constantly learning new things and being thrown in the deep end, and just you got to figure it out and make it work. And I think often people feel over their head, and the most successful Foreign Service officers are those who can get comfortable with that, get up to speed quickly, and just learn how to make it work.
I thought of that question, kind of thinking like if you went in straight. It sounded like you went to Stanford and you straight went into that career. Like did you take a year break, 2-year break or anything, or it just went from high school, Stanford, and then that career?
I took a break after college. After Stanford, I worked in the private sector for a while. So I worked doing environmental work for about 7 years before I became a Foreign Service officer myself. So I was doing a different kind of job. I was working actually with fishermen and environmental folks in California to set up a network of marine protected areas. And so, it was challenging and exciting and new, and I felt like it was a really great job. But I had some time to kind of build up some expertise in environmental stuff and get used to working before I did this specific job.
Back in 2004, 2006, I was working as a Navy contractor doing software, and the software was pretty simple. It boiled down to each ship, whatever ship that we provided our software on, it had basically just a green, yellow, or red light, and green means the ship is ready for war, and red means that they didn't prep correctly. One of their mission areas failed, and the ship would be 50. I forget now. I want to say 56 mission areas. I might be wrong on the number somewhere. So each mission area would have a specific amount of questions, like a firefighter. Did they get from point A to point B in the ship within 30 seconds? Did they suit up within 15 seconds? And somebody would be writing all this down. So we digitized it, and they would upload it. They would get it to their ship server. It would get sent via satellite, get to us. And then my software would, the whole thing was the software of the company that we built. So from being on that tablet that they had where they record the answer, putting it on a thumb drive, putting it on the server satellite, down back to San Diego. So at one point, one of the ships turned, I think, red.
The next few references of Colonel should be Admiral.
A colonel called the software office, and I picked up. And I said the department's name. I said, this is Lim Lee. And then he's, this is Colonel something something. Why is my ship red? And I'm like, I don't know, give me a minute. And then my manager came up to me. He's like, do you know who you just spoke to? That's a colonel. Do you know you should say a certain title to him and speak to him in a certain way? And I'm like, I'm young and dumb, I was like, hey, I'm going to work as fast as I can to anybody. It doesn't matter who it is.
Yeah.
And I know that he's a little bit upset that his ship is red, so it doesn't matter. I'm going to work as hard as I can, whether I say something polite to him or not. But growing older, looking back at that, I was like, well, yeah, young, almost over my head, or in over my head on certain things, but pulled through, got through. I believe, in my own eyes, did pretty good job as a software engineer. So
yeah, I think that's,
when you talk about, go ahead. Go ahead.
I think what you're saying, I mean, that's the difference between private sector and government in a lot of ways, and not all government, but military and the job I'm in the Foreign Service is just like that. It's very hierarchical. There's titles. There are people who are above you, and you're deferential to them. You gotta go through the chain of command, and it's weird. Like, I worked in the private sector for a few years before joining the State Department, and I enjoyed that flat kind of hierarchy. You could, And just, if you're competent, if you do your job well and quickly, then, you don't have to like bow down to whoever, you can just do your job and get respect for it. And so it's interesting to go from that to a system that's more like the one that you're talking about with the colonel, where, there's a certain amount of respect that's demanded and do things a certain way. And it takes some adjustment, I think. There's in that hierarchy too, but it's a different system.
Yeah. Let's see, another online question. If you could take this one's an abstract question. I like it, but it's abstract. If you could take a trait from all the different places you've been to, what would it look like?
Yeah, I saw that on your Facebook page, and I think that I thought about that overnight a little bit, and it's hard to generalize, across countries because they're all so different and have different problems. But I think the number one thing that I thought about was, in each of the countries that I've lived, it's always been a challenge to figure out how to help the most needy people. And each one of those countries was trying to do it in their own different way, And in Zimbabwe, when we were there was a big problem with drought and food security and kind of distribution of resources. In Dhaka, there was a problem with climate change and more storms and flood damage. In each of these places, there are vulnerable people, and the government, with all its warts and flaws and good things too, was trying to figure out how to help people. And it's not that different from the United States, identifying who are the most vulnerable people and how to get resources to them in the most efficient way. And so I think if I had to generalize across all the different places where we've lived, the number one thing that those governments could be, and people there are trying to do, is to help those most vulnerable. And it's just a really tough job. And, there's a lot of lessons learned for how to do it efficiently. And there's a role for the United States there too. I think that we have great overseas programs like your USAID and other groups where we're helping to facilitate governments providing assistance to those who are most vulnerable. So that's what I came up with when I was thinking about all the different places we've lived and what was common among them.
I'm going to rephrase a little bit what you said and add my own twist on it. When you said it's just a human with warts. You said that about the government, but probably I'm thinking the way you explained it, you got different areas with flooding problems, like you said, the hunger problems, probably hospital problems, all sorts of problems. So it's just a human with scars, warts, skin tags, maybe a broken bone that you don't see that was fixed. And so it's just that to answer this person's question, I guess that's what I would imagine from your story. Mm-hmm. The trait is just a human being with scars and or flaws, but that's just what it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's see, the next question. Can you tell us anything about what we see in the news as sonic microwave attacks on places like our embassy in Cuba?
Yeah, this was in the news a while ago, and I have to say that I don't have any more information about that other than what's been reported in the media. But it's definitely, I think, to broaden it a little bit, there's stuff that happens overseas a lot, and we have embassies that have suffered attacks of various kinds in the past, and it's definitely not it's a career that's not without its risks, right? And so it's stuff like that happens is definitely scary. And, we're overseas with our families. Like I was telling you, in 2016, when we were in Dhaka, we were on our way to dinner. We were driving our car along, and it was a long day, and we'd been with some friends. So we were going to go to this restaurant that everybody goes to in Dhaka. It was maybe, half mile from our house. And my kid starts crying and screaming. We're like, oh my God, so annoying. I guess we'll just go. Let's just pick up we'll get some takeout. We're going to get some Korean chicken and just, go back to our place. We get back home and we get this alert over our phones that there's an attack in progress happening at the restaurant that we were going to go to. And it ends up being this 24-hour siege where this terrorist organization took hostages at that hotel and killed a number of people, including an American citizen there. And so it was a real wake-up call that, oh my gosh, stuff like this happens overseas. And you might not hear about it when you're back in the States, but it's very real for the people that are living in those cities. And in that particular case, it was pretty close to me and my family. And it was a scary moment. So kind of looping back to what the questioner is saying, I don't have any information on that particular attack, and that was happened in a different part of the world than I've been working in. But it's stuff like that does happen, and we don't always have all the details, and not all the details are always public. But it's it happened with some frequency for sure.
Yeah. I'm trying to find one question. I remember someone asked, but I can't find it in this list. Either it's here and I'm not seeing it, or I forgot to write it down. It was something to the extent of, they asked, in the movies like 007, diplomats and whatnot are like trained like that. Is that true? I'm sure they're joking to some degree, but they want to know maybe from your experience or what you've heard from other diplomats with correlations of that.
Yeah, well, so we get training to go overseas and do our jobs, and there's kind of functional training for your job, and then there's language training. So I've spent a lot of time at our training facility, which is outside of Washington, D.C. in Virginia. And every few years in between assignments, we go there and get all kinds of different training. So I learned training on how to write reports, and it's not all super exciting stuff. Maybe it's not like the movies, but we go out there and get training on topical areas, how to do kind of specific kinds of jobs, how to work all the IT systems that we use to process visas and passport applications, things like that. But actually, the most exciting training we get to do is language training. And so I've learned from the U.S. government Vietnamese, Bengali, and Thai language. And so I spent time at this facility in Virginia learning how to speak those languages in an intensive way. So 8 hours a day, or in the case of Thai, for like 10 months, and learning how to both read and speak the language. And it is the coolest thing. It's amazing. I can't believe that we get this opportunity to acquire this skill. I'm sure like being overseas, going to Vietnam, like your ability to make friends and experience the place where you're living is so much enhanced by your ability to communicate with just regular people. And so, I'm just so thankful for that ability, and it helps us to do our jobs. I went up, I've taken a lot of trips domestically in Thailand since I've been here for a few months, and every time I go outside of the capital and I go to a meeting, I go and I give my introductory remarks in Thai. I ask questions in Thai, I have these conversations in Thai, and there's no way I could have done that without having some language ability. So, and then you just develop these friendships and personal connections that really help you to do your job better. So that's the most exciting training that I've got to experience.
I absolutely loved my time in Vietnam each and every time. I probably, oddly, I feel like I have more neighbors there than I have neighbors here, in a sense that not just that if I went across the street right now, I don't know who my neighbor is. Right. I know more neighbors where my uncle lives in Vietnam. I know more neighbors where my wife lives in Vietnam, or where she lived in Vietnam. It's a strange, different culture. But I have so much more fun when I'm in Vietnam than, I guess, to some extent of certain life here in America when it comes to that.
I think there's such a great sense of community. That's one of my favorite things about living in Vietnam, was that, just people, for better or worse, are in everybody's business, right? And
yeah. Me and my wife talk about that quite often. Actually, she says she'll use the word it's translated, it's boring here in America, but she's saying she doesn't have family and she doesn't know her neighbors here. Mm-hmm. But then she says, if we went back in Vietnam, everybody would be in our business, be in her business, and there's that fun of people being in your business, but then you could get sick of it sometimes.
Yeah. There's a real sense of right. We're in this together, and I think people collectively kind of are working to solve problems. And I think there's a definite benefit on that side. with like immigrant communities in the United States. I think especially, in San Diego, we've got a big Vietnamese population. In Virginia, there's a large Vietnamese diaspora. And it's interesting to see kind of just how those connections are so important, and, businesses thrive because people are helping each other. And I don't know, there is something good about it.
Oh yeah. I think that is when being around my uncle's house in Vietnam, being around my wife's family, it's interesting where they're extended friends. There's so much more involved like that. I feel like I don't experience that here in America. Meaning, like, I don't know, at my uncle's neighborhood, everybody knew my face, and yet I didn't know anybody. Like, I mean, I might have met them once, I might remember their name, but there were so many people where I didn't. At one point, my cousin's like, "Oh yeah, you met this person." I'm like, but that person's already saying my name, saying hello. I'm like, "Whoa, how do you know my name?" But it's stuff like that collective culture, or maybe just the culture itself. People are just more I don't want to use the word friendly. I don't know what it is.
Maybe like pulling people in.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool. There's
right.
something to be learned from that, for sure.
No, I do. I spend a lot of my time thinking about American lifestyle. Like, I was born here. I don't know. Like, if I was born in Vietnam, maybe I would. Yeah, you wouldn't have the option to think about it differently, in the sense of, I live here in America. I could see how the culture of family is. I wish family was closer to what it was in Vietnam, the way people treat each other. But then I understand there is the kind of bad side of Vietnamese culture where, say, an elder always is right. So that is a hard pill to swallow if you come from American culture, where if someone's wrong, you could call them out on it. Mm-hmm. You don't have to shut up just because they're older. That's one aspect of the Vietnamese culture that is tough for Americans. And I don't know, I don't really like it either, that elders are always correct. I think it should go on who is right. There's but like you're saying, there's something to learn on both sides. I think there's times where I hear Vietnamese people complain about the American culture, and there's times I hear certain Vietnamese Americans that acclimated to the American culture that complain about the Vietnamese culture. And I try to tell them both sides, like, hey, I think you guys need to kind of see what's good here, understand why the bad things happen, see what's good here, and then try to find a way to melt it together, but explain it to everyone so both sides understand. There's actually one that me and my wife have discussed quite a bit, where in the Vietnamese culture, if I go back to Vietnam, I have to buy quite a bit of gifts for culturally, I have to buy a bunch of gifts, like a lot of gifts.
Yeah.
And the family over there doesn't understand how much money we make here in America and how much our bills are. And yes, we do have more money typically than them, but typically we do. But I have a couple cousins where they're really fortunate. Like, I have a cousin where I feel like he lives an amazing life over there. In my opinion, he lives a much better life than I do. He's like out partying, out going to all these nice restaurants all the time. He, at a point, owned a car, which you probably know, owning a car in Vietnam is not cheap.
Expensive, yeah.
Yeah. So he's living the life up over there. Like, even when I was there, actually last trip, there's a time where I was like, hey, let's go on a weekend trip, and then let's use the train to save a few bucks. And then he's like, no, let's buy an airplane ticket. I'm like, dang, I'm an American who supposedly has more money, supposedly, and I'm suggesting let's take the train, and he's suggesting buying an airplane ticket for that vacation. So it was just things are changing, and some of some people are judging me. They're like, "Oh, you're an American. You need to bring a lot of gifts when you come back." So me and my wife are trying to talk about that, and it's challenging, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of the real advantages of being overseas. And some of these posts that I've been in is that the cost of living is very, very different than being in the United States, you know. And like you said, you know, a plane ticket can be same price as a bus ticket sometimes, you know.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes it, when you're overseas and you get to take advantage of that and travel and go to nice restaurants, and you can really live large, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. Oh, is this the? Oh no. Okay, let's take another online question. Can you tell us about Zimbabwe? They write, I think most Americans have just a stereotype image of primitive, generic Africa. What is the U.S. relationship with Zimbabwe? Can you paint a picture of what it's like there? Tell us a story that illustrates life there.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think that I don't know if I could have found Zimbabwe on a map before we went there. I think you're right that it's just, you kind of hear it, you're like, oh, it must be in Africa. Like, how is it different from other places? But it is such a cool country, and I really, really enjoyed our time there. It's located in southern Africa, so you think of like South Africa, it's at the very bottom of the continent, and just north of that is Zimbabwe, and it's a landlocked country in between. Got kind of Mozambique on one side, on the Indian Ocean side, and then we got Namibia and Botswana kind of on the other side. And it's an agriculture. You know, it used to be the breadbasket of southern Africa. Really productive in terms of agriculture and growing corn, but growing all kinds of other products. They actually had an interesting range of different agricultural products that they grow there. They basically had this big economic collapse. They had a redistribution of land that happened, kind of associated with their transition from being a colony into having their own government, and then having a system where things were not well distributed, I guess. And so it was, they basically had this big economic collapse. Agricultural production went way down, and they've struggled over the last few years with kind of leadership, with economic issues. It was in 2009, Zimbabwe had one of the highest rates of inflation ever in the world. Like, you know, you think of like wheelbarrows full of money that are not worth anything. Like that was a situation in Zimbabwe, and people had difficulty getting basic goods and surviving. So I think, you know, the thing for Americans to know is that, you know, there's this country that has incredible potential. I mean, some of the most intelligent people I've met. If you go to countries in Southern Africa, and you're often, I'll be in like a hotel or something like that and talking with somebody, and they really seem on it and bright. And it turns out that they had left Zimbabwe looking for other opportunities, and they're, you know, working in neighboring countries where the economies were a little bit stronger. It's a country that has incredible potential, and has struggled for a variety of political and economic reasons over the last, you know, decades. So when I was there in Zimbabwe, I was working on environmental issues, and part of my portfolio. We worked a lot on counter wildlife trafficking. So this is Zimbabwe has a lot of these game animals that you can think of. So like elephants and
no, I think it's good now. I think.
Okay, if it becomes a problem, you know, and I'll just.
Okay. Okay, you're talking about Zimbabwe.
Yeah. So okay, so like you had a question about like what we know about Zimbabwe, and so yeah, it's kind of an interesting place that has a lot of potential, but had a lot of problems. When I was there, I was working as an economic officer, so similar to what I'm doing here in Thailand. But my focus, a lot of what I was doing was working on counter wildlife trafficking. So what would happen is you would have these poachers that would go to Zimbabwe, and they didn't have a lot of resources to protect some of their amazing animals that they had. So, you know, they have a huge elephant population there. There's rhinos, there's lions, there's all kinds of really amazing African animals that live there. And they have a national park system where they're protected, but unfortunately, a lot of the rangers there just don't have resources. You know, first of all, they don't have a lot of tourists. So there's not a lot of money coming in from that, and the government doesn't have a lot of resources to dedicate to some of these rangers. You have guys that wouldn't have shoes, let alone guns or anything like that to do their job. So you have poachers that would come in and kill these animals, and then things like rhino horn would be shipped to consumer markets that were in Asia. So there are markets in Vietnam, there are markets in China, there are markets kind of all over the place. So a big part of my job was to help understand that situation and to the extent possible provide U.S. support for counter wildlife trafficking efforts. And it was really, it was interesting. I went to a lot of different rural locations. I talked with a lot of rangers, a lot of environmental organizations that were trying to help address this transnational crime issue. And the thing about wildlife trafficking is you think, okay, well, who cares about these animals? They're, it's sad for them, but does it really have any other impact? But a lot of the same organizations that traffic wildlife species are also involved in smuggling of drugs, smuggling of people, money laundering, all different kinds of illicit activities. So it was really interesting to get a window into that world kind of through the environmental side.
Did you get to travel while you're in, or did you travel in Zimbabwe a lot, or were you kind of like headquartered in a certain area?
We did. We traveled a lot. So the capital city is called Harare. Used to be called the name when the British were controlling the country. It was called Salisbury, and then when Zimbabwe got its independence, they changed it to Harare. So that's the capital city. That's where we lived. It's a kind of a small town. It's not huge. It's definitely not the size of San Diego. And so we would get out. We had a car, and we would drive all over the place. We'd drive to national parks, beautiful, beautiful locations. And because there's not a lot of tourists, like I was saying, we'd have these places to ourselves in a lot of cases. Then we also took road trips. We drove all the way from Harare. We drove all the way to the Atlantic Ocean. Drove through Botswana and Namibia, and then we went out the other way out to Mozambique. Went to the beach there. We go down to South Africa. So we traveled quite a bit. Did a lot of kind of outdoors stuff like mountain biking, hiking stuff. Just taking advantage of the beautiful natural resources the country had. And the capital city, when the British controlled a lot of these countries in Southern Africa, they established their capitals in these higher elevation places. So there weren't as many mosquitoes and they didn't have to deal with malaria as much. So Harare is at it's like 5,000 feet above sea level, something like that. So super nice weather, like very, for the most part, like warm and dry with not a lot of bugs. And so it was just a great place to live. And I did a lot of running there. Actually, one of the marathons, you asked about marathons earlier. So I did this one called the Two Oceans Marathon down in South Africa. So I trained a lot of the group of these guys in Harare who were good runners, and then took a trip down to Cape Town, which is down in kind of the southern part of South Africa. And they have this marathon. It's actually an ultra marathon because it's a little bit longer than 26 miles, but it goes kind of all the way around this peninsula where you go on kind of on one side, there's the Indian Ocean, and on the other side is the Atlantic Ocean. So it's pretty cool, like really an amazing experience to run in this big race, and all different people from all over the place were there. So yeah, it was fun. Really fun place to live, and I think off the beaten track for sure in terms of what most Americans travel and go see.
On that note, kind of off the beaten track for Americans, do you think Zimbabwe, like I stereotype certain me as an American, but I feel like I'm more prone to travel than most Americans. So is Zimbabwe like how would I say it? Like somebody that wants to go beautiful beaches that's picturesque. So like Hawaii, what else? Cayman Islands or something. What would you suggest Zimbabwe to those type of people, or who would you suggest Zimbabwe to?
Yeah, so I think Americans tend to think of countries in Africa being all the same, right? And it's just I don't know if it's our education system or just lack of familiarity, but there's over 50 countries in Africa, and they're all really unique and different. And I think that going to on safari in Kenya or Tanzania is really different from going to go whale watching in South Africa is really different from going to Cairo and seeing the pyramids in the northern part of the continent, right? So all really different. So I think that few Americans travel to Zimbabwe because there's been kind of political and economic unrest over the last few years. And so a lot of the Americans that end up going there are game hunters. So it is illegal to go and hunt there, and you can do it with the right permits and all that stuff. And so a lot of the Americans we ran across were interested in that particular kind of tourism. But actually, one thing that, I mentioned earlier, it's landlocked, so there's no beach. Like, you can't go to a beautiful beach in Zimbabwe because there's no beach there, except for maybe a few lakes and stuff. But one of the other big things that people go to Zimbabwe to see is Victoria Falls, which is kind of in the northwestern part of the country. And it's on the border. It's on a border area with Zambia in the north, and then there's also Botswana in the west. And so it's this beautiful, beautiful waterfall, and a lot of people go specifically to see that. And often people fly into Victoria Falls specifically. They never get to the capital. They never go to Harare, but they'll do it as part of like a southern African trip. Thing, and just a kind of quick plug is that for Americans that are traveling overseas, the State Department does maintain like a website that has information on not only visas and stuff, but also on like safety and security and all the different things you might know. And it's always updated based on like the situation on the ground. So it's called travel.state.gov. And so that's whenever we travel somewhere, we always log on to that website to see, what the latest is in conditions and stuff. And so when you're traveling to a place like Zimbabwe, you want to make sure that it's safe and that you got all your shots and you know what the situation is on the ground, and it's a good kind of one-stop shop for that kind of information.
What was that site again?
Travel.state.gov.
Okay, G-O-V. Oh, gov. Okay, cool. On the kind of a random thought I had with your diplomatic career, what do you feel is probably the most what's the word I'm looking for? What's like the best thing that you've accomplished during your diplomatic career? That you could talk about, maybe.
Yeah, that's hard because, like I said, I've done a lot of different kinds of jobs when we've been overseas. I have to say, like, one of the most rewarding things, and it still makes me feel emotional, is that one of the things I did when I was living in Manila in the Philippines is I worked in this American Citizen Services unit. And we would, one of the functions of that unit is that when you have Americans that have kids overseas, the child is not automatically an American citizen. So a lot of people don't know, actually. Like, if you're an American, you're living overseas somewhere and you have a child, you think, oh, well, I'm American, they'll be American. What's the big deal? But it turns out there's like a process for getting their citizenship. And you go into the embassy and you apply for this thing called a consular report of birth abroad, a CRIBA. And the people in this particular unit that I was working in are the ones that interview people. They look at all the different criteria and they grant this thing. And I every time I had one of these interviews, we do several of them a day. I just always felt so happy and excited. And it was like this new. You get to be the person that helps this new, usually baby, get their American citizenship and all the wonderful things that go with that. And it's, I don't know. When I think back of all the different things, I've helped minority people in Dhaka figure out ways to get support that they needed to deal with terrorists that were targeting them. I've helped to reduce wildlife trafficking in Africa. I've helped to promote American companies and their businesses here in Thailand. But somehow that personal connection, with people and looking them in the eye, looking at the parents, looking at the child, I don't know, it was just really, really rewarding, and I really enjoyed that work. And then also, in that same job, I was helping not only people in that situation who were getting their citizenship, but then also when Americans were really down in the dumps and had problems, they were in jail, maybe they lost all their money, they lost their passport, and helping those people. I mean, they call the embassy up, and I'd be the person on the other end of the phone talking them through it. Or I talked to Americans in the United States whose loved ones had died or who were sick in the hospital, and like being able to help those people was extremely rewarding. And I think one of the best things that I've done while being overseas.
Were both your kids? You have 2 kids, right?
I do. I have 2, an 8-year-old.
Were they both born on U.S. soil or on foreign soil?
They were both born in the United States. So one was born in at the same hospital where I was born down in. And then the other one was born in Virginia. So we just happened the timing worked out where we would just happen to be in between assignments. We were back in the United States, and it worked out where they were born there. But we have lots of friends that have kids overseas. Here in Thailand, they've got some of the best medical care anywhere in the world, and tons of people have their babies here. It's pretty common. And for us, it just that we're there.
I was gonna say I was gonna ask you if you had your kids born on foreign soil. Did you, the person that did your paperwork for your kid to get citizenship, were you able to converse with them, knowing that you've done that job, you know what it feels like to be on their side? So that was going to be what my question was.
Yeah, no, I haven't had that experience, but we had actually, my wife was pregnant with our first child in Vietnam when we were there, and we did our medical care and stuff there. And it was really, actually, we went to the, if I remember it right, the F Franco-Viet Hospital, I think, in District 7. I think that's where it was. And we got all our paperwork from it still, all the ultrasounds and stuff, and it's all in Vietnamese and French. It's really funny. So we did all our medical care and stuff there, and then, she gave birth back in San Diego.
Nice. What on the diplomatic thing? What makes a good diplomat?
Yeah, kind of like what I was saying. There's a lot of different kinds of jobs. So you could be good. You could be good at writing and analytical stuff, and be a really great diplomat in terms of like understanding a situation and foreign policy. You could be a person that is really has good interpersonal skills, and it's really good when people are in need. So like that consular function that I mentioned, where you're helping American citizens who are in jail or lost their passport, like having that empathy and able to work with them, like that would make for a good diplomat in that situation. Somebody who's really detail oriented. We have a whole category of diplomats that are the ones that run our embassies. They're the management folks that do all the HR and run our medical units and all our different stuff. Like, you have to have really good organizational skills to be good in that category of diplomacy. So I think the one thing that is common among all of those is that having the ability to be flexible and creative and get up to speed quickly, especially since you're always in a new country with new evolving situations, is the most important thing. Your success in your particular job function depends a little bit on what you're doing and the situation in country.
Almost like a jack of all trades, but being able to learn jack of all trades, learn a new trade at the same time. Yeah,
exactly. Better. Like, as you get more senior, you've done more jobs in the same kind of function. Like, you've done more of these economic officer jobs. You know what's involved. You get better and better at it. But you're always in a new place with like new government, new political situation, new economic situation. So you really have to be flexible and be a jack of all trades. And you never know, like in this country, maybe, negotiating a civil nuclear agreement is the highest priority thing. And you got to like learn the lingo to how to talk to nuclear scientists. And maybe in this other country, it's, oil and gas is the most important thing. So you got to figure out, how do I talk to, people that are doing oil exploration and understand their process and markets and all that stuff. So everywhere you go, even if you're doing the same kind of job, you're going to have like different categories of things you're working on, different language, different kinds of people. So being flexible is super important.
Yeah. What country was your favorite to live in out of all that?
That's such a hard question. Yeah, I think that they've all been great for different reasons. I I really like, our first place that we got posted overseas was Vietnam, and I think it still has kind of a special place in my heart. Just it was, I was, had limited travel growing up, and here was this opportunity. This whole world was open to me, and by the way, I got to learn the language, so I could make all these local friends and explore those hole-in-the-wall coffee shops. And I mean, Vietnam has some of the best food in the world, so we had great food, we had great friends, we had great adventures and travel. And because it was our first assignment overseas, it was really a special place for me. But every one of the assignments after that has been fun for different reasons. I mean, gosh, I loved exploring Southern Africa and taking these road trips across the African plain where you're looking out at all these different amazing animals, and the culture and the music there was so great. And then we went to Dhaka, which has this great history of language and culture and music, and it was different. I wasn't familiar with Southern Asia very much, so that was a really neat experience. Living in the Philippines, we have this great American connection with the Philippines and with Filipino people, especially coming from San Diego. Everybody had a relative that was from San Diego, and I feel like I connected with a personal level in the Philippines just because of that long history between our two countries. And then Thailand is just, man, it's like a tourism mecca. I mean, there's just anything you can imagine. Like you talk about, you want to go to a beautiful beach, they got that. You want to go rock climbing? Okay, they've got that. Rafting? You want to have great food? You want to, I mean, anything you want to do, they've got it in Thailand, and it's been really a place to be. So I love them all, and I think Vietnam is a special place in our heart. But I think they've all been great.
Oh wait, is this? Next question. What is it like to raise kids overseas?
Yeah. Fun and challenging, I would say. So the challenging part is that they are far away from their family and and they have to always make new friends every couple of years. So it's like being in a military family in a lot of ways. Like every 2 or 3 years, we move to a new city. They have to get into a new school, make new friends, sometimes get used to a new language. And then, the grandparents hate it because they don't get to see the grandkids very often. So we Skype a lot with my parents or with my wife's parents. And we try to maintain those connections with their families, with, my brother and sister and their cousins and all this stuff. So that part is very challenging. Turns out in the technologically connected world that we're in now, it's a little bit easier, but it's still hard. It's hard to be far away. But there are huge advantages. I mean, my kids, they love food. They eat anything. I mean, we took this trip to China a few years ago, and I got my little one who was, I think she was 3 at the time, and she's eating worms and all different fish and squid and all these chicken feed and whatever. I mean, their minds are open to new experiences, and it's all an adventure, and they're very flexible, like they get up to speed. When we're moving here to Thailand, my older one was like, oh, you're going to move to a new place. You're going to have a new school. Here's what it's going to look like. She's like, oh, I can't wait to meet all my new friends. I mean, the attitude.
That's awesome.
Here's an opportunity to get some new experiences, to meet some new people. It's not all roses. I think that, kids can really suffer and be challenged in this situation and feel like, oh, I'm always the new kid, always going to make new friends. But so far, knock on wood, my kids have really thrived in this particular kind of environment. It's been great.
I wonder, on the topic of like racism, I would imagine being like if it was one of your kids, the chances of them growing up and having a racial issue with someone, as in them being racist, your kids being racist, I feel like having that experience, like it almost nullifies that. I don't know. What are your thoughts on seeing certain people in the news be racist, or how certain kids are raised in a semi-closed society because it's one type of race there? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. I think having more experiences, having more friends that look different ways, really, really helps them be more sensitive to those issues and keeps them with an open mind. I mean, they've had friends on like, I don't know, 4 different continents, that, we have pictures of them in Africa where, they have a bunch of little African kids they're all playing with. They're all having a great time. And got pictures of them in Manila where it's a whole bunch of, little Filipino kids and they're having a great time. And I think it helps them to understand there's people look all different ways and have all different backgrounds, but they can still, kick a soccer ball around together, or they can still play dress up together, and it's still fun, and that there's actually benefits to that. It's not just okay; it's actually better to have all these different kinds of friends because they bring different things to the table, and it's it's been good. And my kids, are multicultural. My wife is half Japanese, and so they, I think that they look pretty Caucasian, but they have that personal background that helps with them understanding, people from different ethnicities, from different countries. And I think being multicultural yourself and then living in a very multicultural world helps you to be more understanding and kind of look at the world as a place where people should be working together and learning about each other and benefiting from that.
Yeah. I wonder what that would do to my mind in the sense of like, I guess to some degree, when I traveled to Vietnam or when I was in Sydney, when you step into an airplane and step out from one continent to another, you don't feel a difference. But you do feel that culture difference. Like even in Australia, there's a statement that I've heard where Australia culturally is 20 years behind America. I kind of actually understood that once I went there. Some of the things that are said, some of the way that they how society, how they may say something, certain racial things that where I almost feel like you wouldn't say that now in America, but 20 years ago in America, you could hear someone say that, where back then we didn't really think that was wrong to say that. So there's certain things when I went to Australia, and I might get blasted online for saying this, but I'm not saying anything bad about Australia. I loved being there. Actually, just today I was remembering how I loved snorkeling there. It was probably the best snorkeling I've ever had. But it's interesting to fly in a plane and not almost feel you don't get to feel how big the world is and how the population is so massive. I wonder if kids are able to pick that up. I don't know. It's just random thoughts, I guess. I don't have a direction with it.
No, I think you're right. And I think that actually the interesting thing with Australia is that you probably land there, like you land in Sydney, you look around and it looks like California, in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I understand that, how a place looks isn't necessarily the same as how it's situated culturally and in other ways. And so I think you're right that it's actually really eye-opening to go somewhere and realize, wow, people look at the world differently in different places. They have different histories that affect, how they'll, what their people are able to say and what they're not able to say. And I think that that's something like very, basically, like for me growing up, like I would never have thought of that, but the kids get exposure to that, and especially when they live somewhere for a while, they're like, oh, well, it could look the same, but it could be totally different in a cultural way.
How's COVID treating you in Thailand, and what's the COVID situation like in Thailand?
It's been really interesting. So we moved here COVID's been a big problem since March, right? So we moved here in July, August. And at that time, Thailand had only had something like 500 cases and 60 deaths or something like that. Like a really, really small number compared to what was happening in the United States. And so we felt very lucky to be here. The Thais had actually closed the border for the most part. We're not allowing international travelers in for the most part. And so we had to go through a really long quarantine process. We came here, we flew in, we had to have all these COVID tests. We quarantined in a hotel for 2 weeks before we were even allowed outside. When we got here, and life was pretty normal for the most part. I mean, people wear masks around, but it's restaurants were open. We could go to malls and travel and stuff. It's recently had a little bit of a resurgence here, so there's been an increase in number of cases over the last few weeks, and so things are kind of shutting down again, and there's some restrictions on movement and restaurants and stuff like that. But overall, I'd say that compared to when we were in Virginia last year, it's been the COVID situation has not been as restrictive on our personal lifestyle. Like the kids were able to go to school, we were able to go into work, but it's all evolving, and it's it's kind of like every day you wake up and check the news. I mean, it's just like the United States. Wake up, check the news, see whatever the newest crazy thing is that you're going to have to deal with.
Yeah. How do you keep in contact with family and friends while overseas all the time?
Yeah, we use a lot of regular Skype calls and a lot of phone calls and stuff, and Facebook. I think the number one way that it's kind of funny, the number one way I feel like I know what's happening with my friends is like looking at Facebook, just because I can't, be there and go to social functions or, go visit somebody's house or have play dates or whatever. So I get a lot of like my updates on my friends from Facebook, particularly since everybody's all over the place. I mean, we've have friends that from all the different assignments we've had overseas and then also in the United States, and people that are in my job are, always moving to different countries. So it's hard to like keep track of where they're at. So, I'll look up on Facebook like, oh, Lem's in Bulgaria now. I had no idea, Sally's in, Russia. Wow, that's interesting. Wonder what it's like there. So it's kind of fun. You see where somebody's at and, message them. And we do a lot of kind of remote kind of keeping in touch with people. And then we try to call my folks like once a week or once every 2 weeks and have them FaceTime with the kids just so they can see them. I don't want them to be in a situation where they don't talk to them in 6 months. They're like, oh my God, look, they're huge now and they're totally cool. Like having that family connection is very important to me. And so we do try to keep connected with people that way. And then the other thing that happens, people come and visit us. So the neat thing, I mean, pre-COVID, of course, was that wherever we are, it was an opportunity for somebody to travel somewhere where they hadn't been before. So like when we were living in Zimbabwe, like we're talking about, very few people could even find that on a map. And so my folks came out, my wife's folks came out, they come and stay with us for a few weeks and get a chance to travel around and meet our friends, see what we did. And that has been really fun and then our friends come and to the extent they can come visit us. And we expected a bunch of people to come visit us here in Thailand because it's such a great tourist spot, but just because of COVID and stuff, it's been hard.
Yeah. COVID's really fucking up everything.
Yeah, it's tough for everybody.
There was a question here from one. So this is related to I think the embassy in Bangkok. Are the U.S. Marines still playing basketball with the high schoolers and the DEA agents at the old embassy compound in Bangkok?
I don't know. That's
So this person, they I want to say it was probably about 20 years ago. Their parents, his parents was in the military, or contracted some. So his parents moved to Thailand for 3 or 4 years, and he was watching, I guess, that situation where there was Marines and DEA agents playing basketball with high schoolers.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. Well, so Bangkok is one of our largest embassies in the world, and we have people that work for the State Department like me that are here, and then we also have tons and tons of different agencies here that are doing all different kinds of things. I mean, it's really amazing. You have people from the Department of Agriculture that are here that are, looking at agricultural trade, or you've got people from the U.S. Trade and Development Agency that are here that are looking to help American businesses and American companies solidify deals here and that are going to benefit the American economy. You've got military folks that are here that are dual, and we have very, very strong military collaboration with Thailand. So huge number of people. I imagine the scene that you're your friend is talking about, where you have, people from different backgrounds playing with high school kids and stuff, still is the case here. And it's funny, it's such a big place that, I don't know a large percentage of the people that are here. But yeah, a big presence that kind of reflects our strong collaborative relationship with Thailand here. And we do have Marines. You mentioned Marines, and actually Marines, we have a Marine security guard that protects all of our various embassies around the world, and we're very lucky to have these folks that are here. And anytime there's a big incident, one of the attacks that we talked about earlier, they're the people that are here and really on the front line. And so we are thankful to have folks like that here as well in Thailand.
Yeah. What is a universal thing of all the countries that you've been to, do you think that they should learn from each other?
Yeah, I think, I don't know. I think the thing that I like the most about all the different places we've been is how people are so proud of their culture in different ways and how they celebrate it in different ways. And I think that's kind of the most amazing thing that would be great for people to learn from each other. Like I'm thinking about when we were in Zimbabwe, they had this, like, here's a place that I was talking about. It has all these political and economic challenges, but every year they would have this international festival where they would have music and art, and all these like artists would come together for like a multi-day thing that would happen in the capital. And you could go and just see people not only from Zimbabwe, but from other countries. They're all celebrating their culture and their art and music together. And I kind of compare that to like when we're in Bangladesh, they have like their have a really strong history of culture and music and art, and they'd have every day they'd celebrate their mother tongue, their language day, and have kind of festivals that were, or events that were focused around celebrating language and writing and poetry and things like that. And so I really enjoy in each of the countries seeing how culture and art and music and language are celebrated. And I think it's neat for countries to be able to compare how it's been done in different places. And it's actually one of the things that we do through the State Department. Well, there's a section in our State Department that focuses on cultural exchanges. And I think that's one of the coolest things, that you bring people together from different places, and you get them together and you get them talking about what they value and what they think is important, and you build those kind of connections, and then people will maintain those connections over many years, and share their ideas. And it's one of the coolest things to see happen, and it's something that I'm happy that we're able to help facilitate, kind of in the role that I'm in as well.
Did you get to experience the Vietnamese New Year, the Tet?
Yes, of course. Yeah. Oh, it was wonderful. I have these great memories of being in Ho Chi Minh City, and they closed down some of the streets, like Ham Nhi, I think, one of the big streets near where we were, and they'd have these big displays and all these flowers, yellow flowers, and you'd hear the music and see all the kind of the festive atmosphere, I guess, there. And yeah, I mean, that's what another great example of kind of this celebration of culture and history. Oh man.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, when they spend some of them, I haven't been able to experience it yet, but I hear that they do an entire week of just partying. Did you get to kind of experience it that way, or were you, did you have to get to work?
Yeah, no, we experienced that. They usually, when we're overseas, so there's like a cap on the number of holidays that we can get each year. So we get like American holidays, like we'll get 4th of July off or Christmas or whatever. And then we get like some number of local holidays as well. And so during Tet, that's usually, like your government contacts and stuff will get a longer period, like a week or longer.
Oh, okay.
And then we don't usually get like quite as many days off, but we'll get a few days off. And it's like people travel or go and celebrate, go to these parties and stuff. But yeah, we did get to celebrate that. And one time we traveled up north and had like kind of got to experience how Tet was up in the northern part of Vietnam. And then one year we were down south, and around Ho Chi Minh City. So it was fun to compare and see how it was different in different places.
Yeah, nice. Did you ever interview for U.S. visa applicants? So as at an embassy, and then what were automatic red flags that you looked for?
Yeah. So good question. I think just to say that I think that visa questions are probably like when people find out that I work for I work in an embassy overseas. That's probably the number one thing people ask about, because it's just there's a lot of interest. I think there's a lot of mystery about, or people don't always understand the decision-making process for how visas are granted and how they're not. So I did do every Foreign Service officer does consular work in their career, and I did that in the Philippines. So I did interview for non-immigrant visa applicants, people that wanted to come to the United States for tourism, for business, for temporary stays, right? And it's hard. The question about like, were there automatic red flags? Because really, what any person who's working in that field will tell you is that there's each application is different, and it's really the totality of that person and their personal history and their travel and the reason that they're traveling. It all goes into the hopper in terms of kind of trying to understand whether they qualify for a visa or not. And the person that's in that job is comparing the person's situation to the legal requirements, that's written out in law and regulation, or whether they qualify for the visa or not. So, yeah, I couldn't point to a single red flag, and it's not an area that I'm working in right now. But I think that the main thing to know is that there's kind of like legal requirements in the law, and that the consular officer is trying to compare the whole case to that law, and that the more information that the applicant shares and is able to explain their legitimate reason for travel and everything in their case, the better their chances would be. And that often I think people are worried about sharing particular details, and I think that lack of transparency in terms of interview is probably something that doesn't benefit. I would guess. But like I said, I couldn't speak on any kind of official way about the visa process, and it's really different in different countries, different applicants, in each different scenario.
Is there any crazy stories that you can talk about? Or I'm guessing since it's kind of more those applications are private, so can you even talk about them? Like, is there a crazy story?
Yeah, no, I really can't, because those are, they're private conversations, and
Okay, no problem.
Unfortunately, it's really, there are a lot of interesting things, and you can imagine the full range of reasons that people might want to go to the United States. There's medical emergencies, there's really interesting cultural exchanges, there's really interesting business opportunities, like all kinds of stuff. The details of particular cases aren't something that consular officers generally can share publicly.
Yeah. What place would you like to travel to that you haven't yet, and why?
Oh man, that is such a good question. And it's kind of the hobby that my wife and I have, is we kind of look at the globe and try to figure out where we're going to go. And we have not explored, for whatever reason. We spent most of our time in Asia, and then kind of a little bit in Africa, a little bit in South America. I think the two parts of the world that we haven't explored so much are kind of Europe and then certain parts of South America. So I think that in terms of like a region that I want to explore, I want to go, like, I'd love to go to Europe, and I've never been to like Northern Europe and Norway and Sweden and stuff. I think it'd be cool to go and check that out, see the Northern Lights or whatever. But actually, I think the number one place that I really want to go that I haven't been yet, and I think it's has potential to really change, is Madagascar, which is an island off of Africa in the Indian Ocean, kind of in the eastern part of the continent. And they have, that's where lemurs come from, right? You see Madagascar, you have lemurs and stuff. And these just, amazing animals, amazing plants that are really unique to that island. And because of deforestation, because of different reasons, it's changing quickly. And I think it would be such a cool place to go see. It's hard to get to. It's the infrastructure there is not always the best, and so it's a little bit hard to travel around. But man, I think it'd be really fun to go check out.
For your kind of your career path, starting it out, if someone asked, how do I become a diplomat, would you suggest that same exact route that you went, or would you suggest something different?
Yeah, I think people do it all different kinds of ways, right? So people, so the process for becoming a diplomat is that you just have to take this test, right? And if you pass the test, then you get to be a foreign service officer and you get all the training and stuff. There's no requirement to have a particular kind of degree. There's no particular requirement to have worked in a certain kind of job. You know, you could be a person that works in retail and has never studied foreign policy, but if you can pass the test, then you can become a foreign service officer. And in fact, I think that our foreign service benefits from having people from diverse backgrounds, because they bring different perspectives, they bring different ideas. It's really great to have a diverse group of people that are there. So my role, my process was, I went to college, I studied something that was not foreign policy, but I studied kind of environmental stuff, economic stuff. And then I worked in the private sector for a few years doing that environmental stuff, economic stuff. And then I got into the foreign service, and now I'm doing that kind of thing, environmental stuff, economic stuff. But no way I don't think is that required. And I think that if people like the idea of being overseas and doing this kind of work, signing up and taking the test is great, and you should do it as soon as you can. But I think one thing to know is that people often like the allure of being overseas. They like the idea of like this, they've seen movies like, I'm going to be like, 007, living overseas, doing this, going to receptions and putting on my tuxedo and talking to the prime minister. And it all sounds very exciting. And then they get into the actual job, and it's like moving a lot. It's always kind of feeling a little bit off kilter because you're learning a new language, and you learn about a new country, learn a new job. And they find out it's not for them. So I think that, sometimes getting a little bit of life experience in like terms of what you like and what you're good at helps before you take on a career that's like foreign service that's very challenging. But I could see it, I guess, long story short, I could see it happening both ways. Like doing it early in your career when you want to get out there and you've got energy and it sounds really exciting. Or we get a lot of people that do it as their second or even third careers. Like they've been an investment banker in New York. They made a pile of money. They got burned out, and they're like, now I want to do something different. And they join the foreign service and have a totally different kind of life.
Yeah, I would imagine when you mentioned about being off kilter, say working in an office job where you're in a cubicle, I see certain people where they just get set in a routine. They got their specific coffee mug. It almost feels they don't want to be thrown off in their routine at all. I see certain subtleties where anything that changes in their routine, they're just flustered per se, or it takes they have a certain type of personality or comfort level. Where I think when I went to Vietnam for 6 months, I went to Sydney for 4 months. I'm guessing that I would have a little bit more of a comfort level being in different countries than the average American. I'm guessing. Yeah, I think I would guess most people want to have that comfort level of having a place they call home, and they're going to go there every day. They have access to it. Where if you're a diplomat getting moved around, I guess that comfort level isn't the same all the time.
Yeah, I think that's right. And it requires, like exactly what you said. I think it requires like a specific kind of person that's going to be okay with that. Like they're not going to be comfortable, but they're going to be okay with it. And it's really different. And not only being in different places and doing kinds of work, but like kind of having to figure things out on your own, because there's not like a good guide for like, it's not like you sit down at your desk and you're like, okay, here's the 101 for how to do your job necessarily. Like you kind of got to figure it out and figure out how are you going to develop connections with people, and how are you going to focus on issues that are most important. And it's fun in a lot of ways because there's no like specific guide. You have a lot of latitude for doing your job in different kinds of ways. And so I think some people are excited by that idea, and it's like, okay, well, I'm gonna sit down, I'm gonna have a different coffee cup every day, I'm gonna have a different kind of office every day, I'm gonna have a different kind of work function every day. And that's an opportunity for me to grow and do things that are exciting and new. And then I think other people might look at that and be like, oh my God, that sounds terrible. It's really scary and difficult. And what if I don't know the right thing to say? What if I fail at this? It's kind of stressful in that kind of way. So I think you nailed it. It's just like a personality thing.
Yeah. I find that when I get interested in something, whether it be a YouTube recording series, I knew nothing about photography, f-stops, ISO, all this aperture, all this stuff, the video editing software, the microphones, everything. When I got into it, I had no idea. I literally started just filming stuff, and I told myself, I was like, you know what? The first 6 months is probably just going to be crap. Like I'm going to produce crap, but I'm just going to try it, and you don't know where it'll go. I feel like I got kind of a rhythm now. It took me a few months more than I wanted. I wanted to start this a little bit earlier, but that's the nature of starting something new. Another side story connected with that. I've been a programmer for 16 years.
Oh wow!
And then about 4 years ago, I discovered cryptocurrency, and it may to me it was such a different ballpark. Programming, I learn a language, I get specs from management, I program it. Cryptocurrency uses this RSA encryption, and I didn't know much. I sadly didn't know much about it, so I had a friend that just won at some pool party. He came up and said, "Hey, what do you know about cryptocurrency?" At that day, I didn't really know much. I was like, like Bitcoin, and he's yeah, there's this other one called Ethereum. Why don't you check it out? I knew he was a pretty high up tech position at some company, so I was kind of thinking maybe I should check this out or something. I went home that day, started researching, and I started understanding like the fundamentals of RSA encryption, which this is all built on. And a light bulb went off, and I'm like, holy shit, this is amazing technology. Oh my gosh, this almost feels like the pinnacle of the internet. Like everything that the internet has built up to this. This is the technology that could revolutionize the world. RSA encryption, what that does, it allows a truth factor from consensus. So if you don't know if Sally sent David 5 Bitcoin, this network through mathematical ways sends a signature that says this machine validated that transaction because that machine does know Sally or Dave, who gave Sally, that Dave has 5 coins to give Sally.
Right.
And it signs that mathematically, and then the other computers on that network said, yep, that looks right too. And it is very, very tough to crack, and it hasn't been cracked yet. It hasn't been hacked. And to not even hack it, to overtake the system, you need anywhere between 30 to 70% of all the servers in the world to overtake it. So you as one person, I don't know how many servers there are around the world. I'm going to say maybe like 4 million servers. You have to build like 2 million servers. Probably more than 2 million servers. You have to build, let's just say 3 million servers, put it online, and then you could try to hack the system and take over the system. But it's an amazing technology. Anyway, sorry, I went on a total tangent.
It's funny because I think people get scared because it seems so technical, and they're like,
it is.
"Oh, I don't know, RSA encryption, whatever." But when you get down to like I've had it explained to me in like a more kind of layman way before, and it's like, "Oh, okay, I can like wrap my mind around that." And I mean, I think the use of blockchain technology for other things, is fascinating. You just like look at how many different applications it could have, and takes away the need for like a central authority for things. It's just, it's really mind.
Yeah. So 4 or 5 years ago, someone told me about it. It's crazy because I actually started thinking just the other day. I was like, I think I heard of Bitcoin during the white paper in 2008, and back then, as a programmer, I couldn't put my mind to figure out how they would do it. So I told my coworkers, they asked me, "Hey, what do you think about Bitcoin?" I'm like, I don't know anything about it. There's no way anybody could build a security system like that. There's no way. And then 2016, that friend that told me, "Hey, what do you think about Ethereum and Bitcoin?" I went home, researched it, and I've gotten to the weeds of how does RSA encryption work. There's 2 primary keys. You do all this math, and then you get these 2 private public keys, and that everything is hashed against that public key, and only the private key could decrypt it. And my mind was blown. I was like, I understand this stuff. It's freaking crazy. But as a programmer, I guess that's not as much of a. I was going to try to connect it with being a diplomat and having to be a jack of all trades. I guess being a programmer, I was just writing code. When I had to research RSA, that was math. That was like understanding 2 primary numbers, multiplying all this modular this. I don't even know all the terminology, but I was able to watch I forget, it was like an hour video, understand that, read a bunch of other papers, and then I was like, I get this. And so I think it takes like a certain person where you want to learn and you have the willingness to go out and research and learn more. That's what I'm really amazed when you mentioned that about being a diplomat. Like if you would have asked me 2 hours ago, I would assume, oh, they probably just do a bunch of paperwork. There's probably not too much to it. But it sounds like you have to be a jack of all trades, and importantly, be able to learn a new trade as you go.
Right. And there are resources for it, for you to be able to learn those things and get the knowledge you need to do your job. But it requires a lot of effort and like willingness to learn. Like one of the things that I work on a lot, like probably over half of what I do here in Thailand right now is focus on energy. And I have a degree in environmental science, and I have pretty good understanding of stuff, but like the technical like ins and outs of the oil and gas industry and what different kind of companies do and what a regulatory environment looks like and all that stuff, like a lot of that was pretty new stuff to me. And so I had to, while I was doing my job here, I was taking basically a night class offered in the day in the United States, but nighttime for me. So I do my job, 9 to 5 here. And then I'd get home, I'd have dinner, and then for like 3 or 4 hours in the evening, I'd be listening to seminars and talking to experts in the United States, both government folks and from the private sector, learning about the oil and gas industry and kind of the latest on regulations and technology and all these different things. Like some of it very technical, like new stuff for me, and taking a lot of notes. And so it's then I wake up the next morning and I'd apply that knowledge in my day-to-day conversation. So it's really like a lot of learning on the fly, and in some ways it was a lot of work and hard, and I didn't sleep a lot for those few weeks that I was doing that, but it's also really exciting and it's fun to I think when you're in like high school especially, and to some extent in college, like you're learning this stuff and you don't know why you're learning it. Like, oh, okay, I'll sit in this class. Like, I guess it's interesting to learn about whatever ancient Grecian history or whatever, but am I ever going to really use this? The kind of functional training that I've been getting in my job here is great because it's like, I really want to know these things because I know tomorrow I'm going to have a conversation about it and I want to have as good an understanding as I can. so I'm so motivated to learn these things and to get smarter on them, because it's A, fun, and B, it's going to help me with my job. And that's been fun in a lot of ways.
Yeah, yeah. There's an online question which at the time I understood it. Right now I don't, but I'm going to just ask and see if you understand what they're going at. What is your perception of America, especially that are in support of democratic socialism, as they have experienced firsthand communism, i.e. living in Vietnam?
Yeah. I remember seeing this question. I think, and if I understand the questioner right, it's kind of like there are people in the United States that have a kind of different philosophical leanings, right? And like democratic socialism is one that's been in the news a lot. And then overseas, there are countries that are communist.
Yeah, I think you're the way you perceive the question. That's how I perceive it.
Yeah, and so I think it's when I was living in Vietnam, which is one party communist country. People looked to the United States and I think saw it as a very diverse place with a lot of different kinds of people with a lot of different kinds of backgrounds. And I think that was something, the people, kind of in an unofficial way, the people that I interacted with seemed to appreciate that, and it was, I think seen as a source of strength. And actually in a lot of countries I've been in that have different kinds of government systems, have appreciated the United States is diverse, and that there are people from different backgrounds and different philosophical leanings who are able to share their ideas, and that it all seems to work pretty well. I think the other thing that's kind of interesting to think about is that not only the United States is really diverse, like even a place like Vietnam that is has a certain kind of political system, it doesn't necessarily conform to the textbook. I mean, there's a lot of free market capitalism that's happening in Vietnam, even though it's, overall like a communist state. So I think it's hard when you look at these categories to like fit countries into them. But the overall message that I've received from people, both in my kind of official and unofficial role overseas, has been that, the United States and its diversity and in culture, but also diversity in thought and politics is something that people see to be its strength.
Yeah. Who do you keep up in touch with from high school?
Not as many people as I wish I would, I guess, is the best answer.
I think just through Facebook, there may be, I think, one or two people that I messaged from time to time. But as for actually physically hanging out with a high school friend, I think it's been, the last person was 11 years ago was the last time.
Wow.
Yeah. I actually sent a message to Madhu. Do you remember Madhu?
I do, yeah.
I sent a message to see if he wants to do a conversation. Jordan. I probably shouldn't say the last name. I'll cut it out in the video. Who was the other person that those are the two that I remember off the top of my head. Random thought. Do you think there's anybody that that you know of that should do a conversation with me? And if you do, just say their first name, and then I'll put it in the video, and then we'll figure out a way to call them out.
Yeah, exactly. Oh man, I gotta think about that, because there's a lot of people in high school that I'd love to know more about what they're doing these days, and what their life's like.
Even if you want to call out any friends that you have or anybody that you've worked with that you think would enjoy this type of format, this conversation, that even I don't have to know them, but if you just want to call them out.
Oh yeah, okay. Well, so I think Madhu would be great because he's a genius and doing exciting things and has like the most exciting life that I can imagine. So yeah, I think he'd be a great one. I definitely agree on that. Trying to think of like other people that I don't know. I'm kind of blanking on it. I have to think.
That's fine. I'll ask you another question, and if you think about anything, you can jump back to that one.
Okay.
What current passion do you have, as in a side hobby, or even just something that you that keeps you up at night? Things you think about, things that you work on, or it doesn't have to be actual work, just anything.
Yeah. So, I mean, I kind of see those as two different questions. So for hobbies and stuff, so I really like, so I love travel. I think that's like the number one thing that we do and spend all our money on, and like whatever tiny place that, has never been to before, we want to go to wherever we can and explore as much as we can and get really, really far off the beaten track. And
Wait, so you're telling me you get to travel around the world as a diplomat, and then you still spend all your money? Like, are you saying you travel that whole country that you're in, or you even, while you're there as a diplomat, say you're working, so you're in Thailand right now,
right.
You'll also spend money to go to Japan, someplace you haven't been yet.
Right.
So is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that the cool thing is, when we were living in the United States, I would spend a lot of money getting overseas to another location and then traveling around. And now that every couple of years, we have a different home base, we get to travel around the region, right? So when we're in Thailand, we got great access to, pre-COVID or whatever, we get to great access to Cambodia and Laos and Burma and Malaysia, and like super cheap to travel to all those different places. And then, when we were in Southern Africa, we could take road trips or travel all around the African continent. And so, yes, I think it has made it even more of a push for us to get out and travel, being in these different locations, because we're like, shoot, we only got 2 or 3 years to, see as much as we can. Who knows when we're going to be back to Southern Africa, right? So that is like,
wow.
And my wife in particular is a really good planner. So she puts together all the trips and sets up the itineraries, and we just go. We drag the kids along, and we spend, like, when we moved to Vietnam, I think we must have gone 50 out of 52 weekends of the year just traveling within the country. We just take road trips, little villages. We'd go wherever we could. We marked off all the big name tourist spots, but then we started going next tier, second tier, third tier. Like, what are all the different places we can go? And I think that is my number one passion. And I love food. I love music. I love talk. I'm a talker. I love talking to people. And travel's been really like the number one passion or hobby, and things that I think about at night, that I get really excited about, really gets me through the day. And it's fun to have a career where it's like that passion is something that goes hand in hand with what I'm doing in my day-to-day job, right?
That's crazy you said travel 50 out of 52 weeks.
We travel so much. I mean, we had like zero savings. We were just.
Oh, that's so awesome! It's so awesome in the sense of, I'm thinking, as you're talking to me, and I'm thinking, man, why didn't someone tell me to become a diplomat? Like, I could have traveled to so many places. And then my train of thought is like, okay, if they would have sent me to Zimbabwe, I would have been in Zimbabwe. I would have just explored Zimbabwe a little bit. But you're telling me, like, you went through all of South Africa, the southern region of Africa, I'm guessing, while you're in Zimbabwe. That's amazing. Makes me even more jealous. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, it's just great. It's like, it's great to love what you're doing in your day-to-day job and your work, and then also get a chance to like translate that over to your personal life too. So it's been fun. And I think that,
yeah,
my struggle has been to balance like all the things I love doing. Like, I love travel, and I love food, and love music, and getting out to live shows and new restaurants and stuff like that. And then, also I'm trying to like living the good life. You get fat. Like, I need to get out and exercise. So making time, that's like been my New Year's resolution, is to try to, exercise more regularly and get out. And like you were saying, I've done some running and stuff in the past, and I've done a handful of marathons, but I want to try to get out and do more of that here. And there's all kinds of local stuff that you can sign up for. And I got a nice park near my house where I can run. So I'm trying to get out and do more of that.
I wonder to what degree why being a diplomat is lesser known in the sense of the way I'm hearing your story. It sounds freaking amazing. I wonder why I've never heard of someone saying, hey, they're going to become a diplomat, or hey, you should go to school to get into this degree and try to become a diplomat. Like, I don't think I've ever heard someone promote being a diplomat.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
I feel the exact same way. Like when I discovered this, when my wife signed up for it, like, what are we doing? Moving overseas, and who are we working for? And it's like the U.S. government. Like, for whatever reason, I think that the State Department could improve its like awareness,
advertising,
right? And it's like, I don't know, maybe just it's like the small place where we went to high school. It's just kind of off the beaten track. Maybe if we were at a fancy school that was like in the center of San Diego or something, that they would be more aware of that. But for whatever reason, that knowledge of that career doesn't seem to be getting out as much. And they do have there's something called a hometown diplomat program that is the State Department tries to get people to go back to wherever they're from and tell people about what they do, just to build awareness about it. And there's another in the headquarters building that we have that's down in Washington, D.C., they have like a museum that they're setting up that's supposed to talk a little more about diplomacy and our history of doing it. But I think fundamentally the issue is that the people that do this job, there's a relatively few number. There's 8,000 of us that are overseas. And it's, you compare that to the military with millions and millions of people, the chances that somebody are going to know somebody that does this job, it's pretty small, right? 8,000.
Yeah.
Whole United States, you might not run across somebody from your high school who's like, oh yeah, hey, I'm doing this weird thing. It's called being a foreign service officer working in an embassy overseas. It's just the chances of that knowledge spreading is a lot lower. So yeah, that's why I try to tell people about it. And I kind of discovered it a few years after college, and I'm really cannot imagine a more fun career. And I feel like I feel obligated to tell other people oh my God, this is a thing you could do that I never even knew existed before.
The where you mentioned every 2 or 3 years you have to get promoted to stay in.
You have to.
Is that?
It's every 2 or 3 years you change your assignment. Usually you go either to another country overseas, or you'll go back to Washington, D.C. and work there. But there's a schedule of promotion where you have to every X number of years, you have to move up to a higher level in the system. So they have it's basically, if you don't get promoted to the next level in that prescribed time frame, and it depends on what level you're at. Let's say it's in 10 years you don't move up to the next level, then you have to leave the department. So it's they call it an up or out system.
Does that sound more ominous than it is, perhaps?
Yeah, I think so. I think that people generally get promoted and move up, and it's more people, I think at the upper levels, have more challenge with it. You can only be at this kind of upper threshold for a certain amount of time, and if you don't get promoted at that upper level, then you have to leave. But it's similar actually to a military system. A lot of people get stuck at the colonel level, and there's a huge number of colonels. And getting to the next level is hard sometimes, and so people just get stuck there. So it's kind of like that, I think.
Is there is it like military? If you work there for 20 years, there's a pension or something?
Yeah, there's same kind of thing. You work there, and it's actually similar to other governments. If you've done prior government service, that those years translate over too. So you get your pension after 20 years of government service. If you were Navy for 10 years and you worked as a foreign service officer for 10 years, I think then you would get your full pension or whatever.
Yeah. So on the final questions, I didn't put in the document that that's something that I asked you, and then you don't have to answer on the. So you wrote your answer, but I'm gonna have you answer it.
Sure.
The first one: what is at a global and national level? What do you think is the biggest problem for humans, and what should they do to mitigate it?
Yeah, and there's so many, hard to choose, right? But I think that on the national level, the thing that seems especially in the last few days, it's been a big problem is just political divisiveness and people not being able to see eye to eye and have conversations about their different opinions. And it's sad, I have on my Facebook feed, I've got friends that have different opinions, and there's a lot of people going back and forth. And it's something that I feel, especially when I'm overseas and people ask me about it, say, what's happening in America? It seems like there's this big problem. And I think that we all have to kind of come together and figure out a way for people to be able to have conversations, have friends who have different opinions. I had in one of my assignments, previously my desk was next to a person that had a different political viewpoint than the one that I had. And we would read the news overnight. We'd come to work in the morning, and we'd have like a really productive conversation back and forth, like exchanging viewpoints and talking about like why we believed what we believed. And, he and I would have really heated conversations, but we respected each other. We were really good friends. And I feel like getting to a place in our country where we can do that it seems like it's the right way to go, and it's where we really need to get to. And I don't know, I don't have a solution for that, like how we get to that, but I hope that we can figure out a way to make it happen. And it's probably a really complicated solution. So that's the national one. And I think that for global stuff, climate change, I've come from an environmental background, but, I've been overseas, and, I've talked to a lot of different people, and climate change has very, very real effects. And a place like Dhaka, they're going to be 70% of their country is going to be underwater by, in the next 100 years or whatever. And so I think it is a very real, very pressing challenge. And I think that for us, especially for Americans, it can be a real opportunity for us to lend our innovation, our kind of historic ability to find solutions to problems, and see this as a real opportunity for leadership, and promoting American companies and American businesses that are coming up with low carbon technologies, energy efficient technologies, and make that a legacy of the United States worldwide, and that we help address this challenge that we're all facing together.
Yeah, to add to that, I'm going to call out my friend. He'll probably listen to this. So this is my side of the story. If you're watching, your side of the story might be different. So he was a bartender in Las Vegas. Prior to him becoming like a bartender, I remember having a conversation. I don't remember exactly what we said, but I remember mentioning climate change, and I was like, man, I watch a lot of documentaries. I wish humans and the government would do something more. I don't have an answer. I'm just, the things that I see going on, it just seems like there's not enough emphasis, not enough effort going on to preventing what humans are doing to the planet. And at that time, the way I remember him replying, he was like, yeah, it's not that bad. So I was kind of, I remember being emotionally like, I didn't agree with the way he said that, So then a few years later, he became a bartender for a few years. And one day he said, it just came out of nowhere. And he mentioned, yeah, this climate change stuff, we need to do something about it. I'm like, wait, what? Well, why this change of heart? And then he's like, well, I get customers around the world coming to my bar, and I get like a fisherman from some other state far away from here, and then that fisherman will just, they come in, these clients, they'll have a few drinks, they get loose, and they may not even need a few drinks to mention this, but then that fisherman was saying, yeah, man, after 15 years ago or 30 years ago when I started fishing, we would pull in giant pools of fish in the nets, but nowadays it's like nothing. It's nothing compared to what it was back then. But then he had the bartender, my friend, he had other stories, and I was like, wow, it was an interesting way to think about climate change through hearing people's working stories, being in the field or being in that environment and seeing the change.
Yeah, I think that's right. And it becomes not like an abstract thing where you're like, there's one political side or the other. You're like, dang, my life is different because of this thing that's happening.
Yeah. What do you find interesting about Vietnamese culture?
Yeah, a lot. I think one of my favorite things about Vietnamese culture is people's entrepreneurial spirit. like, I think that, I mean, there's two things. I think one is that we talked about like the community cohesiveness and the idea that, everybody's kind of, there's this idea that you address things together and that, for better or worse, everybody's in each other's business. But I think the other really exciting thing and interesting thing to me is how people are, there's a service to be provided and a profit maybe that could be made, that there is going to be somebody that's going to fill that role, and like, I was always so amazed that in Vietnam, how people would, have these little small businesses for everything, for whatever possible service or need you might have. There's always somebody that's like thought of that and is willing to provide that service and help you out. And it's just, I don't know, it's amazing. I think it requires a lot of creativity, a lot of guts, a lot of kind of just getting out there and working and filling gaps that you see. So, and I think that's both, at a kind of walking down the street in Ho Chi Minh City kind of thing, where there's somebody who's willing to, deliver a drink to you to your office because, you're too lazy to walk yourself down to the drink store. But I think it's also at like a big company startup kind of thing, and that, you see these companies in the United States that are started by Vietnamese immigrants or other folks from the immigrant community. And it's just that drive, that entrepreneurial spirit is something that's really alive. And I like that a lot. I appreciate that a lot about Vietnamese culture.
I don't know if this is a dark road I take it down. And I do mean it in a positive light. When I talk to Vietnamese people and the young people especially, it's almost as if they know that they have to work to provide for their family, their mom and dad eventually, and there's a drive that I don't find in America. And maybe that's because in America we have the, like, when you're 18 years old, like, get out of the house, and not that that's really exactly how parents kick their kids out, but maybe it's subconsciously there, and it causes people to know that their kids are probably going to move out around the age of 18 or something, or the rebellious kids know that they're at the age of 18 they're going to rebel. So for the Vietnam side of that, maybe they can't rebel because of the cultural backlash, that the family backlash that would happen. So I think, yeah, it's a difficult. I want to. When I say that they have this drive to work, I see, like what you're saying. It's almost in what's the word I'm looking for? It like touches my heart when I see that. So I'm here in privileged America. I have a good job. I make a good salary. And then I see them working so hard for how much they make. And I'm like, gosh, their drive is much stronger than mine. If they were in my shoes, they'd be working more, making more money. I complain about my 30-minute drive to work. I complain about I'm a first world complainer. Right. So I mean, I don't mean it to be dark, as in maybe Vietnam, because they come from, at least their generation now came from harder times, or it's only one generation away from the hard times, that their drive is so strong. Maybe I'll turn around on me. I feel lazy compared to when I look at them. So I'm like, what's wrong with me? I'm a freaking, I was born in America. I have this opportunity to make so much money. Why don't I work even harder to make more money? Because that's what those people would be doing. So it's, I don't know. It's interesting, I guess, just the way, where you're born, what you're raised in, and how people react.
Yeah, what motivates you, right?
Yeah.
Like why?
Yeah.
Why are you working? Like, is it for yourself or is it for your family or?
Yeah, totally. What's your favorite Vietnamese dish?
Oh man, I love Vietnamese food so much. So I think Bum Thịt Nướng is like one of my favorites just because it is always so consistently good. Like anywhere I go, you could get it and it would just be good, you know. And I like the little vermicelli noodles, like the boom noodles are just
Hmm.
they're I don't know, they're a really nice counterpart to the kind of fried stuff or the more heavy kind of meat stuff. And so I love that particular dish. I mean, of course, I like banh mi, and you know, the especially when you get it with really good bread, and it's a nice late night snack. Like you go out drinking, and then you stop by somewhere and get like one of these really great sandwiches with the pickled vegetables in there that just has like perfect balance. You know, it's just so good and great. Like soaks up the booze kind of thing. You know, great meat. But I like. I mean, the thing about Vietnam is it's just got such diverse food, right? Like I love soup. Like I love Asian soups. And you know, in the South I get like hủ tiếu, and it's like, you know, a certain kind of like soup. And then, you know, it's different from the pho, which is in the north, and different from, you know, all these different other different kinds of soups. And each one is like a little bit different, but all really flavorful and fun. And ah man, it's so good.
If someone were to someone that had no idea what bum thịt nướng is, how would you describe it?
Well, so it's like the boom part of it is the vermicelli noodles, right? So they're these little thin white noodles that are rice, made from rice, that are kind of like sitting
Yep.
in a little bed, like in a bowl, right? And then thịt nướng is literally like grilled meat, right? And so it's pork that is grilled and kind of sitting on top of it there, and then usually with some vegetables. And then the quintessential condiment is fish sauce, which, you know, the United States like, oh, gross, fish sauce, smelly, gross. But, you know, really good, fresh fish sauce. I don't know if that's an oxymoron. Because, you know, fish sauce is made by this process where you stack up fish in a big, huge vat and dump salt on it and let it rot for months. And then the stuff that drains out the bottom, you put it in a bottle and put it on the restaurant table. But it is delicious, and it is so, and you can mix it with chilies and make it spicy, and it gives this like salty umami flavor to the food, which is amazing. So you got your noodles, you got your grilled meat, you got your fresh vegetables. You sprinkle a little of this salty nuoc mam fish sauce on it, and it's just like this awesome flavor explosion, you know. And it's I don't know. I think of it being a lunchtime thing, but I guess you could have it any time of day. And, oh.
Yeah. Have you tried making a fish sauce at home before?
No, is it something?
Oh, okay.
Is
what
it
was
something
that?
you can do? I didn't know you could make fish sauce.
As in the fish sauce that comes with bum thịt nướng, like like it's just fish sauce, sugar, water, depending on if you want to do vinegar, and then lemon.
Oh, cool.
Um,
No, I haven't tried that.
yeah, I love fish sauce, and I think to try to describe fish sauce as in fish sauce because I'm not sure if you notice, I kind of don't notice too when I was in Vietnam. Each dish also will have its accompanying fish sauce of for that dish, meaning the fish sauce often made with bum thịt nướng. I'm trying to think. It's usually a little bit lighter on saltiness and maybe a little bit sweeter, but as opposed to like fish sauce, if you get canh chua, which is a sweet and sour soup,
Right.
and you have fish sauce, that fish sauce is probably way more salty. It's made to dip the soup soaked items to dip it in that fish sauce, so it's a lot more salty.
Yeah.
I mean, there's going to be variations even just to people and restaurants, but there is typically changes to the fish sauce to that dish, whether it be egg rolls, bum thịt nướng, canh chua, and whatnot.
Right.
Yeah, so if, typically those are the ingredients: the fish sauce, a lot of sugar, a little bit of water to dilute the fish sauce because it's so strong, a little bit of vinegar or lemon, and then chili. Yeah, I love fish sauce, man. I drown my bum thịt nướng in fish sauce. I mean, almost every dish that comes with fish sauce, I usually drown it with that stuff. And then the other one that you mentioned, banh mi. So describe a banh mi to, I guess, to somebody that's never had a banh mi before.
So banh mi is like a sandwich, and it's pretty cool because it's like a great melding of the kind of traditional Vietnamese food and the kind of colonial history. So you've got like Vietnam is probably one of the only countries in Asia that I've been in that has good bread, and I guess that's a legacy of the French kind of.
Yeah. That's kind of interesting. Isn't Thailand isn't bread a big like that's a delicacy there? Isn't I'm not sure. I just heard.
There are definitely bread and like kind of bready dessert things. Yeah, I guess
Or maybe
as well.
Maybe it was like an old traditional thing. Maybe that it used to be a delicacy. Maybe for the price, but nowadays it's cheaper.
It could be. Thailand has had an interesting history with a lot of different influences from Europe, and they've had kings in the past who have really emphasized that connection. And so I wouldn't be surprised if some of those culinary practices also have been integrated as well. And I'm still learning. That's something that maybe, I'm going to add that to my list to look at history. But yeah, the banh mi is like a bread. It starts with the bread. The bread is like one of the most important thing, right? And I remember this one guy that I was talking to about it said it's all about the air bread. It's like really light.
Yes.
Air, right? And you cut it in
Yes.
half, and you add to it a lot of different kinds of things. It depends on what kind of banh mi you want, but often it'll be something like a sausage, like a salami kind of thing. I don't know, but ben Wai, I don't know what it is exactly, but it's like a salami kind of thing, and then pate. And then these pickled vegetables that go in there. So like vegetables that are soaked in vinegar and sugar and stuff. And it has this like great like meat, depending on whatever kind of meat you had in there. It can be chicken, it can be pork, it can be fish. And then the kind of crispy bread, and then the creaminess of the pate, and then the kind of vinegar, like sourness in there, and it's just a great snack. It's so good. We used to have this lady in Virginia that we would go to. They have the little Saigon in it's the Eden Center in Virginia, near where we used to live, and we'd go there, and they had a lady. We just buy a bag of these banh mi sandwiches there because they were so good, and because they're so light, you could just eat them like crazy. So. Such good.
When I was in Saigon last year, I probably spent, I want to say it was like a week's worth of time looking for a banh mi that had. I'm not sure if this is Americanized. I don't know if this is a Vietnamese Americanized thing that I like. There's a sweet mayonnaise that they put in the banh mi.
Yeah.
When I was in Vietnam, I couldn't find like 95% of the places I went to, they didn't add this sweet mayonnaise that I liked. So I tried to describe it to my family and friends over there in Vietnam. I was like, yeah, back in the States, like the Vietnamese shops, they sell these banh mi's, and I like banh mi thịt nướng, the grilled pork. And then with that grilled pork, when you get that sweet mayonnaise, when that savory grilled pork plus the sweet mayonnaise and all the vegetables and everything, it's one of my most favorite dishes. Yeah. And so for me to be in Vietnam, I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna get some really good banh mi. And then I didn't find any that happened to have I found very few that had that sweet mayonnaise. I'm not sure it's mayonnaise or butter. I've tried to actually recreate it at home. I've actually haven't had much luck. I feel like I've gotten close, but I haven't hit the magical spot yet. So that's kind of something I'm actually curious about. If somebody knows the history of that, hopefully somebody watching this, let me know.
Yeah.
Let me know where this sweet mayonnaise history or sweet butter comes from. It's
seems like
amazing.
You need it, right? Because otherwise it'd be really dry. Like you need to have something to kind of counterbalance all that other stuff happening.
Yeah. No, I was kind of, I guess, disappointed when I was in Vietnam. A lot of them sold it without I think what a lot of them tried to do was they added just soy sauce to get a little bit of that to get that moisture, I guess, because it's a if you're gonna have, well, you get the veggies, but I guess the bread will kind of dry. It's a dry dish per se because of the bread, but so then they add the soy sauce, and that was something I was disappointed where most of them did soy sauce, and I found very few that did the mayonnaise. And it was funny. I'm going too much on a tangent. I found one shop that did the sweet mayonnaise, but they didn't have the grilled pork. So I literally walked to one place, bought the grilled pork banh mi, went to another place, took the ingredients and put them in one, and then ate it. That was so yeah, Vietnam, amazing food. You mentioned Hue Thieu. There's the dry and the soup version where they add the broth in already. How do you like it, and what ingredients do you like on top?
I like the soup version, and I think the first time I had it was I was on a trip down in the Mekong Delta, and I think it was one of those boat trips, and a lady pulls up next to you and mixes the boat and gives it to you, and so I kind of had like a very nostalgic kind of feeling.
Heck yeah!
I mean, it's what the cool thing is that the food does not have to come from a fancy restaurant to be delicious, right? I think that was kind of like a moment for me. Like, this is amazing. Like, regular people with simple ingredients with simple setup can make delicious food. I mean, I think the best pho I ever had was at the train station in Hanoi. We were going to go up to Sapa on the overnight train, and we were like looking for some food before we get on this overnight train, and like walked to some random stall, probably only like 6 feet wide or whatever, and this lady's cooking up like the most delicious pho I've ever had. And so it's just, I don't know, I love that idea that you don't need much, you just need the know-how and some fresh ingredients, and you can really just make delicious food.
Yeah, I wish America could somehow incorporate that, as in Vietnam, all the food stalls is everywhere. And now I understand from a food safety precaution, right, it wouldn't fly here in America, but man, that to have those foods, I mean, even if you scaled up the price to fit America, like in Vietnam, it's kind of unfair because that Hue Thieu dish probably costs you probably 15,000, 25,000 or something. Right. So that's $1, maybe 75 cents. Yeah. That is, I mean, a meal like that for $1, like, oh my goodness, like this is heaven. Now, even if you scaled it up here in America, say if it was $8 for a dish like that, or $10, like we're missing that here in America. You can't recreate it because of all the regulations here, but man, people that don't know this are missing out.
I know, and it's sad because like the equivalent in the United States is fast food, right? Like if you want to get go to McDonald's, right? But like that's it's fat. It has the same kind of speed and price point, but the thing about these options in Vietnam or in Thailand where I'm at now is like it's still healthy food. It's still real ingredients. It's still good stuff. It just happens to be cheap and fast.
Yeah. I actually read what I thought was a really smart article when they were talking about McDonald's coming to Vietnam, and they were saying McDonald's and Burger King and KFC are not pulling in as much revenue as they do in America. And the article goes into saying, well, you have to consider, like, say that food stall that's selling Hue Thieu, that lady probably woke up at 4 a.m. to prep that soup. So you're getting a dish that's been stewing, and you probably ate at probably 11 a.m. So that's been stewing for 7 hours with this meat, this broth, and these veggies inside, whether garlic or whatever. And then by the time you get to eat it, this is 7 hours in the making. You go to McDonald's or something, I mean, it's that food might have been just put on the grill 5 minutes ago, and it's sitting on a hot plate or whatever, and then you get it. So it's super fast, but you don't get that flavor. You can't do that in a fast food place, that the way that these pho, Hue Thieu, even banh mi sandwiches, like that would take a lot of that banh mi sandwiches. I feel like if you had a Subway try to create banh mi, I don't know. It'd be tough.
Yeah.
Even have you been to Lee's Sandwiches here in the States?
I don't think so.
So Lee's Sandwiches is a chain that's, I believe, in Orange County, Texas. They they opened about a year or two ago in Las Vegas.
Okay.
And they do banh mi sandwiches, and they do a decent job. But even then, it almost kind of feels like I'll say, I feel like if you told me to go get a good burger and you said McDonald's, I'll tell you go get a good banh mi and go to Lee's Sandwiches. Meaning, they fast fooded the banh mi thing. It's decent, but it's still not banh mi that I like. Whether at a nice restaurant or just someplace in Vietnam, a local street vendor, it's still not the same.
It's hard. It's really tough to find that balance between getting it quick and getting the right quality, and especially like you said, these flavors take a long time to develop.
Yeah. If you know about pho, that takes like almost a minimum of 4 hours to get that broth going. So yeah, people are missing out. Go to Vietnam, people. All right. Last question. What habits do you have that improve your life the most?
So aside from getting out and traveling and trying new food and trying new things as much as possible, I think that's probably the most important thing in my life, is getting out and trying new things. And I think that going and making that effort to not go to the same restaurant, even though I know this restaurant's really good, I'm gonna go try the one next to it just in case it's better, And I think that's it's a little bit drives my wife crazy because there's this book called the Paradox of Choice, and it's about how people make decisions. And some people find the thing that they like, and they just are happy settling on that thing, because why would you go anywhere else? Because it's like, this is awesome, like I don't need anything more. And then there are other people that are overwhelmed by the number of things that are out there and the number of choices, and it can paralyze you a little bit, and like understand there's all these choices. But I feel like I love the idea of trying something new. And even when I go to the same restaurant, I'm always trying to like figure out what's a new dish I can order off the menu. I know this is like their thing and they're really good at it, but maybe I'll try something else. And I think that's that particular habit of mine of like always wanting to try something new, always wanted to go to a new place. Like, I know it drives my wife crazy, but I think that it probably like it helps contribute to having a really rich life with a lot of new experiences. And some of them are bad. Sometimes it's like, oh my God, why did I try that? It was horrible. Sometimes they're good, sometimes it's the best thing ever. And I think it's just being willing to take that risk and having that motivation to try new things has been really, really good for me.
Are you as bad as me where like I'll take almost 15 minutes, 30 minutes more just to search a new place and it'll drive people crazy.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Come on, this thing's right down the street. We don't need to go and like, oh no, but look, maybe there's something around the corner. I have to say that I'm not very good at doing my research, so that I rely on my wife to do all the research and find all the great places and the great options. And then, my preference is always to try whatever the option is that we haven't done yet.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for the talk. This was awesome, man. We'll have to do this again.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, actually. It's kind of neat to just have the flexibility to talk at length about things and just have it, like you said, be a free-flowing conversation.